Hi, I'm Ryan.
I'm Jeff.
Welcome to Stirring Up the Lees, a show where I try and have a different shirt on at least every episode, and Jeffrey wears the same shirt every episode, and we talk about wine. What are we doing today?
Well, in true Halloween fashion, we're going to go trick-or-treating.
And we're going to see if some wines with some potential tricks up their sleeve are in fact a treat or
just a marketing gimmick. Well, wine number one is the Behringer Brothers Bourbon Barrel-Aged Chardonnay.
Basically what that means is there was some used barrels from a bourbon distiller and they sold them to a winery to see if they'd impart any sort of bourbon flavor into the wine.
So it's interesting. So this is second use bourbon barrels. If we know anything about bourbon, we know it has to be 100% new American oak. So there are a lot of bourbon barrels, used bourbon barrels out there. Just ask the Scotch industry. But in this case, the wine industry, I guess, is interested. Aged for 60 days.
Only 60 days.
60 days.
Must be quite harsh. This is interesting though because you see a lot of this kind of barrel swapping going on in the brewing industry or in like the Scotch industry where they use sherry barrels or Madeira barrels or something like that. But not often do you see spirit barrels making their way into wine.
But when you think about Scotch, I mean, it's an actual selling feature. It's like, okay, this Scotch was aged in port barrels, aged in sherry barrels, aged in Madeira barrels, aged in bourbon barrels, aged in French oak barrels, aged in Sauterne barrels, and that's like on the label. That's something the producers are proud of because it's imparting a positive flavor characteristic. But you never even hear about that in the wine industry at all.
No.
Like even kind of to your point with beer, sometimes you'll have those partnerships between breweries and wineries where it's like, okay, I used X winery's barrel, put this beer in it, and it's great or horrible, whatever the case may be. But the wine industry never does that.
Well, don't say never. Never say never.
But here we are. So what we've seen lately, a trend among certain producers, I think I've seen it most in the US and Australia, of aging wine in bourbon barrels, rum barrels. I've actually personally never tried them before. Have you?
No.
Huh? Well, let's see what we get.
Well, right off the hop, talking about bourbon, probably made from corn. This is quite corny.
It is quite corny.
And I did just have some popcorn, but this is different.
But it's interesting because this has only gone through...
Canned corn.
Oh, the finest canned corn. This has only gone through 20% malolactic.
Right, okay.
So they're trying to retain some freshness, even though this is 14.5% alcohol. But I agree, there is a quite pronounced mallow character.
But to me, this isn't the corniness that I get from the mallow fermentation. This is more like
actual corn,
like corn spirit, like from the bourbon.
Okay, yeah.
Just coming across a little like this is like sweet. It's almost like fresh sweet corn, versus like that really, depressing canned stuff, Little Green Giant or whatever.
Okay, so you like this corn character in some way then?
No.
Okay, you don't like this corn character. Are you not a corn fan?
I love
corn. You prefer it popped?
I like popcorn too.
You like it fresh? You like it popped?
Like most of our garden.
Just not in the wine.
Most of our garden this year was corn.
Was corn?
I like corn.
Outside of that corn note, actually I don't find it wildly oaky. I think there's like some kind of floral aromatics that actually, I was going to say maybe that's in some way from the oak, but it's not because this is 96% Chardonnay and then 4% aromatic varieties.
Oh,
and that's what's giving a bit of a floral lift here.
And so is the only oak that this wine's seeing that 60-day bourbon barrel, or is there a component of this that's actually just aged in American or French oak?
My impression from the website was it was just that 60 days. The only
character you're getting is that.
Easily identifiable as Chardonnay. Like it tastes like oak Chardonnay. There is a bit of like a caramel like sweetness there.
For sure.
Which could be actual residual sugar or it could just be from
picking up from the
bourbon and that sweetness of the American oak. This was 91 points from the wine enthusiast, and that's not a shy score.
No. Actually, I quite like the palate. Like,
yeah,
it's a little round, a little sweet, but I think there's good acid there.
Like if we honestly poured this blind, would you tell this was bourbon aged, or would you just say this is an oak Chardonnay?
I would just say this is oak Chardonnay.
Yeah. So to me, it's not like overtly bourbon influenced.
No. Maybe that's why they only leave it for 60 days and
right.
instead of
like going over the top. Because to be honest, I assumed with this style of wine, this was going to be like in your face, like what you see is what you get, kind of just like bourbon. Chardonnay, boom.
Mix the two together.
Yeah.
Call it a day. If you are a fan of bourbon, do you like this wine more?
Well, I assume this is supposed to be a gateway, right? It's supposed to be, oh, you're a bourbon drinker?
You're a bourbon drinker.
Yeah, well, try this Chardonnay. It's been aged in bourbon barrels. And that's how you kind of maybe get that spirit drinker over to wine.
Or it's just like they're long on Chardonnay and they need a gimmick to sell it. Or they're having difficulty selling Chardonnay.
Well, and then they buy cheaper barrels, presumably. Because this isn't an expensive wine. This is like under $20, I think. And so I think, the fact that it's going into an actual barrel, even if it's for 60 days, there's something there.
Well, I'll call this one a treat.
Yeah, I think maybe it's just that I'm so surprised that I don't mind it. It's kind of like a treat from that perspective, because I kind of assumed this was going down the drain, and maybe we'd even pour another glass.
Yeah, I think I was expecting it to be bourbon, all in your face, dominating the palate, but it's just kind of an interesting Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Wine number two.
Wine number two. We're trying a blue wine. This is in fact not wine though. This is a
flavored grape beverage.
Flavored wine beverage.
Oh, flavored wine beverage.
And I think it's interesting because when we think of wine, we have a very kind of pure idea of what
this is green in the glass.
I actually like it. It kind of feels.
To show, can we show like it's blue liquid in a flint or clear glass bottle? It's like antifreeze.
It does look like antifreeze.
Basically, this is not called labeled wine. It's called a flavored wine beverage.
Yeah.
Because there's food coloring.
There's food coloring. We have an assortment of stuff going on. We have water. We've got wine. We've got glucose, fructose. Got some flavor added in there. And the color.
Flavor. Oh, yeah.
What would you say this smells like? I was trying to think about that.
Fruit cup.
Oh, yeah.
And so there are products on the market that are blue wines that the color additive that they're using is a naturally grape-derived anthocyanin-based.
So we're told, yeah.
So we're told color additive, and that's how you can label it as wine. This is the cheap route, the food coloring route.
But apparently a study showed that some blue wines that I think were supposedly going about it the natural way, the grape-derived way, were in fact still blue food dyes.
Whether it's derived from grape anthocyanin or not, it's still going to be a dye that is made to add to solely color wine and do not much else. So, I
mean, even blueberries aren't blue, and neither are grapes. I actually like the slogan for like one of the first blue wines that came onto the market was the wine that connoisseurs don't want you to have. Which actually I find slightly outrageous because like I want people just to drink good wine. I mean, if they like blue wine, I guess have it by all means. But
why does your wine need to be blue? Let's be honest.
And I think their actual response was, why not? Which is fair. I mean,
like I can understand the green beer, St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
But blue.
It's kind of like Pepsi Blue. I suppose that's the ultimate, like, why not?
But that was blueberry flavored, wasn't it? It
was cotton candy flavored. Did you not have Pepsi Blue? That was a thing for like 1 week where it's like, give me that Pepsi Blue! And then you're like, fuck, this is disgusting. But, so let's taste
this.
More is like it spritzy? Yeah, I think slight spritz. It's unoaked according to the bottle, and that's no surprise here.
And it's gotta be the sweetest thing. This is a wine cooler.
It's a wine cooler.
It tastes like freezy.
It tastes like Kool-Aid. Yeah, are freezy for sure.
Maybe freeze it and then like smash the bottle.
Oh yeah, popsicles.
And then just like pour it out into an ice tray. Freeze that.
Oh
that
yeah.
Into, like cocktails or something. And then you got blue ice.
Which I think is a way to say this is a trick.
This is a trick. 100%.
It's not really a treat. I could see like young people, like if you were just getting into not even wine, just alcohol. Like, and you know, if you're in that generation of like sourpuss or like Bombay,
it does have like the sweet sour candy thing, doesn't it?
I'd love to know who it's shooting for, actually. Well, let's move on to the next wine.
Yeah, I'll call that one a trick.
Wine number 3. We're going to South Africa, which probably really isn't the point for this wine, but it's called the Grinder, 2018. This is 100% Pinotage, as far as I know, but called the Grinder after a coffee grinder because of its kind of pronounced mocha and coffee flavors. So let's see what we get.
Let's see.
I should add, this is still a wine. This is not like a blue wine. This is not a flavored wine. It's not like coffee's been poured in here. It is a wine. They just have flavors that are familiar to what you find in a...
This wine's probably been around for a decade.
Yeah, a while for sure.
And
I don't know, have you had this before?
I've never had this actually, but there's obvious ways that you can get those kind of mocha coffee flavors into a wine.
How it was explained to me at one point, like a combination of, well, the website says abundant oak, but I think it's American oak and Pinotage, like in tandem, produced a very like coffee rich aroma.
So not necessarily something they might have been looking for to begin with, but
yeah,
they're like, oh, this is like coffee, let's market it that way.
I could totally see that happening, where this is less like marketing department driven. It's kind of like, oh, what crazy scheme can we work up next? And more just like, oh, we tasted this in the cellar. It's like, oh my God, that tastes like coffee. I like coffee.
Well, if there's one
Other people like coffee.
If there's one thing I like more than wine,
I do like coffee.
I'd probably give up wine if I had to choose.
Well, the problem is, like, you can drink coffee throughout the day, and it's for some reason unfashionable to do that with wine. So, you know, for that reason, I almost would go with the coffee.
I guess that's a reason.
I'm a little surprised because this smells more wine-like.
This is more winey
than coffee-like.
If you get like single origin coffees, in places like Ethiopia, high altitude, where it's very berry forward, you almost get more fruity notes than you do roasted notes, especially if the roaster is roasting it with care and finesse and stuff like that.
Yeah, presumably when they went about kind of creating this wine, they thought, okay, we're going more for like that dark roast type of coffee drinker.
I get more jamminess on the nose up front than I do like mocha or coffee.
Because the website said abundant oak, and actually I don't find this as oaky as some of the wines that we've had so far.
I think it's quite oaky on the palate.
I'm not saying it's not oaky, I'm just saying
it dominates the palate.
But it has like a grainy quality to it, like almost like that oak tannin type quality.
Yeah. Which I guess they're probably trying to come across as like the bitterness you get from coffee.
Right.
Or maybe you drink like a real sludgy French press.
It makes me think a little bit about how when they invented chunky pasta sauce for the first time, and that's going to sound like a wild tangent, but you know, eventually they realized there's almost like 3 types of pasta sauce eaters. I was going to say drinkers because it's like soupy, but you could probably eat it on pasta. Anyways, and so they realized there's actually a consumer demographic out there that favors chunky pasta sauce, and they were looking for that texture. And it was something like the market hadn't realized until that point. And to me, it's like that bitter element to bring this back around, where it's kind of like people think of bitterness oftentimes as like a negative attribute, something you don't want.
Right.
But if you're that dark roast coffee drinker, you're used to that intense bitterness. And so maybe you look for that in your wine as well.
Yeah, no, it's the same as people that drink black coffee. They don't need sweetness or creaminess from dairy products.
I actually think this is fine. I don't know if I'm going to go trick or treat them somewhere in the middle.
It actually has a 91 points. I could see this doing well in competitions because it's kind of bold in your face. It would stick out in a lineup.
But to me, it still has that, I'm going to say it again, but that confected fruit quality.
Yeah. Where
it's like, this is a made wine still, even though I think this is like a reasonable quality wine, but it has a made character. And it's not showing a ton of place or even like varietal character necessarily.
No. Like I wouldn't call this Pinotage if I had it blind.
Right, and you worked in South Africa, so you should know.
It's not really a trick. and it's fine.
Yeah, if anything, maybe the label's the trick because it's
Yeah.
trying to convey something that's.
Exactly.
I don't think you're really getting in the glass because I think neither of us have really talked about coffee
No.
in this wine.
But I wouldn't call this a treat either. So kind of a gimmick, but not bad.
Yeah, if you like kind of big-ish, bold-ish red wines that are reasonably priced, this will check those boxes.
I mean, if you like American oak,
If you like American
it
oak.
tastes like you're just licking it.
For our last wine, we're going to Italy, and the winery is
Tenuto di Aceno.
perfect. The wine we're drinking is Valadorna. This is, at first glance, entirely irrelevant to this episode.
It's almost as if Jeffrey picked a treat just for us.
That is partially true. This is obviously an Italian estate based in Tuscany, based in the region of Chianti. We're not drinking Chianti though, because this is a Bordeaux style blend. So
Right.
it's 70% Merlot, 20% Cabernet Franc, 10% Cabernet Sauvignon. And today, Bordeaux blends in Italy, no big deal.
But back in the day, big deal.
Big deal. And that's innovation. Innovation comes in different forms. Comes in blue colored wines, and it comes in different grape varieties that are maybe not indigenous to certain regions.
It took some rogues back in the day around the Bulgaria region, which are now referred to as the Super Tuscans, that started planting Bordeaux varieties and got some incredible notoriety for the quality of wines that they were able to produce.
Sassicaia.
But because they weren't using the grape varieties that were legally allowed to be produced in the region, they had to label it as an IGT, which is just like a generic wine of the region, wine of the country.
What's interesting, because if we think of the New World, oftentimes you have regions who are making comparisons to the Old World. It's like, this is my Burgundian Pinot Noir, and this is my Bordeaux blend. But even then you have Italy saying like, well, I want in on this game.
This is my Bordeaux blend.
Yeah.
In a region that should be growing 100% Sangiovese.
Sangiovese. But what I find really interesting with these wines is in a lot of cases, they're not trying to be something that they're not. To me, they always have that Italian character that
They've always
comes
been
through.
their own thing.
Yeah. Like you could always taste a wine and say like, no, this isn't Bordeaux. This is still Italy. This is still Bulgaria, or in this case, just Toscana. We should maybe have a real glass.
It's got that savory edge to it.
Yeah.
The gaminess. Like you could just imagine drinking this with cured meats.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Kind of gamey, leather, sandalwood. And that's what the thing with like Italian reds in general, they're not overtly fruity wines. You know, there's fruit here, but it's not, you know, what's driving the bus necessarily. It's all that kind of complex savory character, like you said.
Like, and now we're getting into soil-driven wines, where there's almost, I don't know what kind of soil this is grown on, but it's almost like a granite-driven savory edge to this. This has layers. This has texture. It's got nuance. It's got complexity. In today's standards, it's not a trick anymore.
Oh no, this is a treat.
People have been growing Bordeaux varieties, Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, Merlot,
Yeah.
in Italy for decades. But at a time, this was what one would consider a trick.
I think so.
Maybe kind of to differentiate from the soup of Sangiovese that was grown about the region. So this wine is kind of a different level altogether.
Yeah, no doubt.
But I think, so if we're looking back, I think what we need to do is compare the wines we've tried and categorize them as the Halloween candy that you'd receive. Because I think it's obvious to say like, this is the full candy bar.
Oh yeah, like the full chocolate bar,
Yeah.
like when you get that O. Henry, you're like, my God.
Full size. I gotta get another costume and come back to this house.
But we go back to the Beringer, the Bourbon aged Chardonnay, somewhere between trick, somewhere between treats. Not offensive. I would drink it.
I call that one a treat. I call that like a...
Did I call it a treat before? Have I reneged?
I think you have. I think it's like one of those treats where you're not familiar with it. And you're like, oh, what is this gonna be?
I was gonna say chocolate covered peanuts.
You don't like those?
I think they're fine. Like I eat them. It's in your bag, but it's certainly not the first thing I eat. But eventually you get near the drinks.
Were you into like toffees?
Oh yeah, I like toffee. Toffee was like that's like a walking candy.
That's kind That's kind of what it is to me, because it's like when I first saw it, like Macintosh, or
Oh yeah.
it's like, what is this? This isn't what I want. And they eat it, and you're like, oh damn, that's pretty good.
Then we're into the blue wine,
Which is like your apple.
I think it is the apple. I mean, it's tough though because I mean it's so sweet, it's so confected, it's so artificial. It's not really an apple. But it's like it's the apple in the sense it's the thing in your bag you never consume.
You don't want.
Straight. I mean, I guess if you think like, oh, this apple has a razor blade.
Maybe it's like, oh, that's actually getting pretty scary out there. I know every year I go trick or treating, I get more worried. Maybe it's like a bag of chips, because like you like a bag of chips, but by the end of your Halloween trick or treating adventure, it's just a sad sack of crumbs.
That is true.
It's
gotten to a point where it's not recognizable as chips anymore.
Yeah, and it's it still tastes good.
Yeah, chip dust.
It's like salty, potatoey chip dust.
You're still gonna open the gullet.
You're still eating it.
Pour that bag in, but it's not.
But it's not what you want it to be.
No.
Exactly. Which moves us into the grinder, the Pinotage grinder.
Kind of like a trick from a marketing perspective in the sense it wasn't overly coffee flavored, but is fine.
Fine. So it's squarely in the middle.
I mean, I think the obvious answer would be coffee crisp, but I think.
Oh man, I love coffee crisp.
Well, that's what I'm just saying. It's the obvious answer.
Doesn't taste like coffee though.
What's
exactly like the wine? It would be one of those things that you ate before the things you didn't want to eat. So what were those? Probably those chocolate covered peanuts, to be honest.
We eat the chocolate covered raisins.
Oh no, I like those.
You like those?
Yeah, down the hatch with those.
Really? I mean, I would eat them, like obviously, but okay, that would be almost last. That would be kind of dead last.
No, not for me. I think any like gummies.
Oh, no, I like gummies.
All right, so we're obviously on different pages when it comes to the treats that you receive trick or treating. But we can both agree, at least, that this is the full candy bar.
This is the full candy bar. Delicious wine. Would drink again. Would buy again. Recommended. There are all the stops.
Does this wine cost more than the other three combined?
Yes, it does. But for good reason.
And that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Anyways, I think that's trick or treating. That's Halloween sweet. Episode number 1.
Stay safe out there.
Try not to get any razor blades in your candy or any poison.
But I think, this Halloween, we're all doing things a little bit differently. Maybe it's a fun opportunity to go out, try something different, and see what you can find, and tell us whether it's a trick or a treat.
If you like that video, like that video.
Please.
If you like that video, subscribe to the channel.
If you like Halloween, subscribe to the channel.
If you like orange, or black, or pumpkins,
or witches.
If you trick-or-treated with a pillowcase, you gotta subscribe.
You trick-or-treated with a little plastic pumpkin with a handle. You're gonna subscribe.
Yeah, but you shouldn't, because you're not our ilk.
All right, we'll take the subscription.
We'll take it.
But we won't produce content for you. This is a sacred channel.
Cheers out there.
Bye.
Stay safe.